I think we're live now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Apprenticeship Week, day 3, but day 4 of the week. And it's been glorious so far. Monday has been fantastic. Tuesday, we were blessed to have a special guest minister join us for the Apprenticeship Week. Our apprenticeship minister was here on Tuesday. And today we've got wonderful speakers to you once again to relate to you about Apprenticeship Week. And as always, we're going to start with Rani Moorcroft, who is the host for the whole of this week under her organization, Z Generation. Before I hand over to Rani, these are all the speakers because you won't get to see them again from now on as we start the program. So Rani, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tunde. Well, welcome everybody. It's lovely if you're still staying the course, because today is Engineering Day. And engineering, of course, has so many facets to it. I've tried to bring together a number of speakers, all who will give you their personal journeys, because we want more apprentices. In April, apprenticeships go up to over 25, so as long as you have got less than A-levels. You can train for anything and you can do anything. Very quickly, yesterday, Tunde mentioned that the Apprenticeship and Skills Minister was here, Gillian Keegan, and she told us that she had just signed off an apprenticeship for outer space. Can you imagine an apprenticeship to go on, into a rocket and go into outer space? So literally, the stars are up to you. So, Apprenticeship Day, Engineering, we're building a green global Britain. I'd love to introduce you to our first speaker, who is our MP, a local MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock. And he's an old friend of ours because he knows us very well, has supported us, and was the former envoy, government envoy for engineering. So he talks from the heart and he talks from experience. So welcome, Stephen Metcalfe.
Thank you very much indeed, Rani. And it is my pleasure to join you and Z Generation for this National Apprenticeship Week set of discussions. Now, as you've heard, my name is Stephen Metcalfe. I'm Member of Parliament for South Basildon and East Thurrock, a role that I took up in 2010. I'm a former, as you've heard, engineering envoy for the government, but I'm also a former chair of the Science and Technology Committee, and I currently chair the Committee on Artificial Intelligence. Now, before I was a Member of Parliament, I worked in the printing industry, an industry that, was completely transformed by engineering over the time that I spent in it, 25 years. It moved from being analog and apprenticed business into being digital and professionalized. And I think that demonstrates the power of engineering. Because if you think about it, the world around you, it doesn't grow, it's engineered. Everything. And I think that just demonstrates the importance of the sector. And it is a vitally important sector to the UK. It has a value of around £500 billion to the UK economy, £500 billion. And we have a very rich heritage in engineering as a nation. Most of the way, or much of the way the world looks around us is due to the fact it has been UK engineers that have helped construct that. We're the ones who built amongst the first roads. We developed bridge technology that has brought communities close together and literally bridged divides. We are global experts in tunneling. We are the people who engineered the very first vaccine, something that's poignant these days, back in 1798. Yes, over 200 years ago, the first vaccine. So it's not new technology that we're experiencing now. But engineering today has the ability, in my view, to help us address some of the very biggest challenges we face both nationally and internationally. And it's never more important. We've seen it during this pandemic in the response to COVID. We have engineered new ways of creating vaccines. the engineers involved in creating production facilities that will have to produce around 14 billion doses in total around the world. The engineering that will go into delivering those vaccines, whether it's the software engineering to make sure that we find all those people in the most needy cohorts, or whether it's developing delivery systems in the developing world that can get super cold supply chain vaccines delivered to some of the remotest areas on the planet. And it is engineers who will do all that work. It's engineers, in this case AI engineers, who have built the COVID symptom tracker app that many of us may be using, that helps predict and plot where or how the current pandemic is working out. But of course, probably the other single biggest challenge we face globally is climate change and all the various things that that means. We've got engineers working on the Faraday Challenge, which is a research project to look at how we can develop better, more efficient batteries so that we can really see the explosion of electric cars and electric vans, and then on to electric buses and lorries. We are those who are designing the systems that will allow us to exploit and access the lithium needed to make those batteries, to do it in a sustainable and clean way in Cornwall, where there is a large deposit of lithium. To try and truly tackle climate change and its effects, we need to double our efforts, both in decarbonising our economy and also mitigating against the impact. And governments around the world need to invest more in R&D, from the blue skies thinking end of research through to development and onwards to ultimate deployment. And therefore, I'm really pleased that the UK government, with cross-party support, is committed to spending 2.4% of GDP on research and development. But this isn't just about money. It's also about people, showing there is a place for everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity, or regardless of background, a place for everyone in engineering. And for the UK to continue to be that science and engineering superpower that it's become and maintain our engineering preeminence, we need engineers. And here lies the problem. If we want to play and continue to play that key role in shaping the world around us, we need to address two key challenges. The first one is that engineering at the moment, sadly, is too male, it is too white, and it is too middle class. And we need to change that, not just to improve opportunities for all, but because the whole sector is missing out on a deep pool of talent and creativity that could bring new thinking to the sector and to solving some of these challenges. For engineering to prosper and to continue to prosper, we as a country need around 286,000 new engineers every year. And sadly, every year we fall short by around 20,000. Another challenge is that only 1 in 9 engineers are women. And the representation from the BAME community is very low indeed, as is participation from less affluent families. I mean, it's well said that engineers inspire engineers. If you know one, you are potentially more likely to become one. So we need to fill that recruitment gap. We need to fill that recruitment gap. We need to inspire more people to become engineers, because, as I said, there is a role for everyone. The second key challenge, which makes meeting the first challenge harder, is that not enough people of all ages actually know what an engineer is. Many see an engineer as someone with a tool belt and a hard hat, and don't get me wrong, those people have a place in engineering. But it goes so much further than that, as I've sort of expressed earlier. As I said, look around you. Look at the engineering that's gone into the technology that you're currently using, the building you're potentially sitting in, the chair you're sitting upon, all of whom have had an engineer's involvement. So to try and improve the participation and perception of engineering, the government have been promoting engineering through Engineering Take a Closer Look campaign, which I was very fortunate to lead. It encouraged young people, their parents, teachers, and influencers to look again at this vitally important sector. But as I say, there is always more to do. As a country, we have done well to promote better STEM education. There are improvements in the take-up of science at both GCSE and particularly at A-level. Technology is embedded across the curriculum. Maths education is now available to an older cohort. But sadly, when we talk about STEM, the E remains silent. And that is a huge disappointment, which is why we need to increase and tighten our focus on that area and how we can embed understanding and engineering both within society and within the curriculum. We also need to ensure people don't self-exclude too early, that they don't see themselves as engineers. And that requires us all to talk about engineering and to express our appreciation of its value. Now, there are many routes into engineering. Of course, there is the traditional route of A-levels and then on through degree courses. But one of the best ways into engineering is through apprenticeships. I was privileged in my role to travel up and down the country visiting businesses, east, west, north and south, who are completely dependent upon their apprenticeship programs for making sure that their talent pipeline remains full. I visited companies such as Rolls-Royce and Airbus, where you see some of the most inspiring apprenticeship programs, where you see young people who often achieve greater success through an apprenticeship program than they would if they'd gone down the traditional university route. After 4 or 5 years working as in an apprenticeship role within a company like Rolls-Royce, you've got more experience, probably better qualifications, certainly an understanding of how the business works, the opportunity to see all aspects of it, and all that time you've been paid for doing that. I cannot understand why at times we do not value apprenticeships as much as we do university education. And I think that if there was one thing to come out of that, is a parity of esteem between university and high quality, well rewarded apprenticeships. So as we look forward to the challenges we face following this pandemic and tackling climate change, I want everyone to take a closer look at engineering and how we can encourage more people to consider the opportunities that are available, especially around apprenticeships. It's good for the country, it's good for the economy, it's good for the future of our planet, but above all, it's good for the individual who benefits from well-paid, rewarding career, a well-paid, rewarding career that will support them throughout their lives. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to share my enthusiasm for engineering. And I very much look forward to hearing what other contributors have to say.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So a question to you, first one. Would you have preferred to stay in the old business, or would you have any regrets about coming into the house?
None whatsoever. I'm someone who always likes to look forward rather than look backwards. Printing is a challenging industry, but there are new opportunities opening up in other areas all the time. I see the power of AI having a transformational effect on the country, and that's why I co-chair the all-party group on artificial intelligence, to make sure that as we deploy artificial intelligence, that we do it in a fair and equitable way that supports people along that route, that we don't allow it to displace employment, that actually it augments our existence rather than supplants us and replaces us. So I always look forward.
Well, Essex, of course, we missed out on 2020, which was a huge year for us. Marconi particularly, it was so sad. And I hope we can just forget these last 2 years, push on. Our young people need to have as much enthusiasm about life. We're not going to be locked in forever. And when we come out, we're going to be kicking our way out, aren't we? Yes? Absolutely,
100%. And so when we are allowed to do things in person again and together, you're right, we need to get that British Science Festival back into Chelmsford. We need to make sure it gets full cross-county support, and that we encourage as many people from all those different backgrounds I mentioned to take part in it and appreciate what a great opportunity the future holds for us all as we embrace some of the challenges, but use our extraordinary science base to deal with them and create those really rewarding jobs.
That's lovely. And as always, never one to not push the envelope. When we're open and going, John Barron's going to have us up there one day. would you host a little party of Z Generation and for us to come up there and see, talk, sit in the gallery, listen to you, see all about A&I?
One of the best parts of what I do is the ability to invite people to come and share in what I describe as their house. It's not my house, it's the Houses of Parliament, which belongs to the people. So showing that off is something I really enjoy doing. So of course that invitation is there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. Right, so we're going to move on now to the ones who actually deliver. And my very, very, very great friend, Daniel Pillai, is somebody who I respect to an enormous degree. We are together in one way in that our parents were Sri Lankan. And so Daniel comes from the same sort of stock. He's part of the Z Generation group, where mostly Commonwealth, mostly getting on a little bit, aren't we, Daniel?
I won't own up to it, Rani.
I say we might be slightly sort of crumbling at the edges, but at heart we are there with the same passion. So Daniel is, he will tell you all about what he's doing. But for us, if we're looking at green, clean energy, as Stephen touched on, we have to look to the sun. Renewables are so important, and to cut our climate change, the threat of this, it's over to Daniel to tell us about what he does. So BIPVCO, off you go.
Thank you very much, Rani. I hope you can see my screen. So hopefully come flash back on. Okay. So I want to share a little bit with you about my own personal journey in engineering and how I got where I am, and then also share with you my current vision of how, as an engineer or engineers, we can play a role in addressing some of the challenges, particularly in terms of sustainability and the existential threat that we are facing going forward. So Stephen's already touched on it a little bit, but just kind of summarizing, what is engineering? In broad terms, I tend to call it as solving problems using science and technology and mathematics. So it's solving problems. And I often refer to it as science in action rather than science in the book. And improving ways we work, the way we travel, we communicate, we stay healthy, and we entertain ourselves. All of these are impacted by engineering. So, it has a huge impact. Lots of things that we take for granted wouldn't be happening if it weren't for engineers and engineering per se. There is a lot of career choices, as Stephen has touched upon, at all sorts of levels. And I can't compliment the apprenticeship schemes that are out there, because honestly, if you're lacking in confidence to go for the A-level and the university route, I highly recommend the apprenticeship. In all my roles, as I've always insisted on hiring apprentices in my companies, even at the depth of recessions, because it was the best investment a company could ever make. And I can't encourage that often enough. So we know about the main disciplines of engineering, but underneath all of that, there are hundreds of subdivisions. There is endless opportunities at endless levels to find a role that suits one's ability, and so on and so forth. So if you want to make an impact, that's what you do. I'm going to kind of summarize. My background is in civil engineering and manufacturing, building products. So, all of these things you can be involved in, from designing to supervising to carrying out surveys, to plan the program, to manage the projects, to fabrications or on-sites and off-sites, sales, and then become managing the business. So I took the journey. I started off life in design and moved on to sales, and then to management, and then into really creativity and inventing new products and developing new products in the green sustainable energy. And I know some of my classmates even went into financial services and teaching. So, the horizon is wide, and as wide as you want to make it. So right now in my current life, I'm running a company that produces a very unique range of solar panels. And it's not just any old solar panels that one can buy from China and plonk it on a roof. We bought into the vision of turning buildings to power stations. And I'm going to share with you why we felt that was important. And we also wanted to help reduce emissions in vehicles and remote sites. And I've got Prince Charles talking about carbuncle-free zones. That's because we want buildings to still look attractive once you put the solar panels on. So this company called BIPVCO was spun out of research and development program that was conducted between industry, academia, and government. And I happened to have led the program. And at the end of the program, this particular thin film solar product, we decided to commercialize it and spin it out as a standalone business. And we now manufacture this product here in Newport, in South Wales. And reason for the vision of affordability is because 50% of all the energy that's ever consumed is consumed in a building. And therefore, it's only imperative that if you can generate that energy at or near the building, you don't need all the infrastructure to transport the energy to the consumer. It is that, therefore, we feel it's a very good way of generating affordable, renewable, and secure energy. And it's very important for human need. You know, sometimes we take it for granted because we are blessed to live in a country, you know, that makes this possible for us. But if we take the world as a whole, you know, 1.2 billion people have no electricity. Their children can't go to school, or they can't study at night. They have no access to clean water. So the current setup has failed many, many people. We have to find other ways of reaching out to these people sooner than we have, and we need to make it affordable to them. So we need water, we need food, we need shelter, and we need energy. Because if we have energy, we can deliver many, many of the needs that people have. You know, I have a bit of a slogan that says, if you have the sun, you potentially have everything. It wasn't true, but it could have been truer. You know, how can we use it? We can use it to pump water, we can find camps and shelter, we can run hospitals, we can run schools, we can do the farming, we can breed animals, we can grow plants. It's endless. So you can see how important energy is and how nations have gone to war in order to acquire sources of energy. And we need to, and by generating the power nearby, you are empowering the population to take control of their own destiny and not rely on some large utility companies or the inertia of governments to deliver that energy to them. So that's what we are trying to do, trying to be impactful. And engineering offers this wonderful opportunity with the partnership with the right kind of investment and support to be impactful in people's lives. So BIP is a company, what we are trying to do is we collaborate. You know, we are a disruptor. We come up with a new product and a new technology. A little bit like Tesla. It wasn't enough just to build the cars. You had to go and build the charging point so that you have the charging point. So for us, it wasn't enough just to develop the product. We had to work with roofing manufacturers to make sure that our products are compatible with their roofing systems, it can be integrated properly, and it can be launched. Equally well, we had to work with installers, and we are working with colleges and universities to train installers who could join our approved installer schemes, and they could install our product. And we've had a very flexible approach. We took the solution and developed a product to meet the solution rather than develop a product and then look for a solution. It wasn't a solution looking for a problem, but rather a solution addressing a problem, because conventional solar panels did not address the need to integrate it properly with the roofs of buildings. So these products that we make, they are very lightweight, they're unbreakable, they work in low light, which is excellent for the UK, they are self-cleaning, they're tolerant of shadows. So for all of these reasons, this product is now gaining a lot of traction in the marketplace. It's highly sought after by architects, particularly who do care about the appearance of the building, and the maintenance-free, duty-free period of the product. Here is a short video that shows how these flexible modules are applied onto a steel roof. So he's just going to roll it up, put it on the jig, and peel off the back sheet that's preventing the adhesive from sticking. You take it off, he now lays it on. All the connections and the cables will go underneath that surface, and then he'll just roll that back and roll it out again and adhere it to the roof as you see it there.
Daniel, I think your screen has frozen. I can't see anything except for things that look like biscuits.
That may be at your end, your broadband's probably a bit slow, Rani.
Oh, right, just like me. Okay, sorry, I'll duck out.
Okay, so that's it really. By the time you lay that down, that's the solar panels now integrated onto the roof. And you're just going to press it down, and that's it. So that's that roof ready. So once that goes on that roof, that's what it looks like in its finished state. So that's the active office and the active classroom in Swansea. You can see what it looks like. Pictures. And here is a performance, proof of performance, how that roof actually behaves in real life. It performs, exceeds expectations, and it demonstrated that. And this shows how the cables and everything is integrated into the roof so that it looks seamless and not, shall we say, it's carbuncle free.
Daniel, I'm afraid we can't see it. We're just seeing the screen. Never mind. Oh,
hold on.
kitchen brackets.
Yeah, no, it says here. It says here it's still showing my screen, so it should be okay.
No, now it's showing, but it wasn't showing before. Thank you.
Right.
Is it still
could
showing?
we go on? Could we go back and have a quick look at maybe the way it was going? I love that when it's coming off of the
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah, we can see Kitchener Barracks.
Do you see the video?
No.
Okay, can you see it now?
No.
No.
Right. Maybe we ditch that because I wanted to ask you some questions.
Yeah, okay, let's ditch that. Let's move on.
Sorry,
to the next
Daniel,
one.
can you see the screen, the Zoom screen? If you can see the Zoom screen, then you can see what's going on.
Yes,
There
I
we
can.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. If that video can run,
Okay, let's give the video a miss and move on. So that's what the panels will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it now?
Yes, aerial view.
Okay, yeah. So this is what the solar panels look like, and this diagram shows how it's all laid out and then how all the cables are strung through. Some additional views of other buildings just to show. This is how it's installed in a factory. These are modular houses which are built in a factory in Derby and then shipped out to the site. And that's a closer up view of that. This is in Port Talbot, Neath Port
I'm
Talbot.
sorry, Daniel. It's not working. We're not seeing this. Let's scrap this because I want to ask you some things about Sainsbury's and tell me about that. Tell me about Sainsbury's.
Okay, so besides doing it in houses, we're also working with mobile vehicles as well, because the thing with mobile vehicles is 30% of the fuel is used not to propel the vehicle, but rather to run the accessory ancillaries. These could be lights, these could be lift gates, telemetrics, and so on. So by applying solar panels, you can stop idling the vehicle. So for example, ambulances, for example, have adopted using our modules on their roofs to be able to not to have to idle them and to be able to provide service to the people in the ambulance without having to run the engine and so on and so forth. So we're able to extend the life of the battery, minimize the amount of idling, and the emissions and so on. And it has a very quick payback of 2 years or less. So there's a huge interest from fleet operators, including supermarkets, as well as courier companies, as well as the blue light services in adopting this technology going forward.
How long did you tell me that an ambulance, once it's supposing, and I hadn't realized because of course all the emergency equipment to keep people alive in an ambulance is using up the battery. So once you do that, you did say to me that, was it a whole day it's got to take? You take that vehicle out to recharge?
Yes, well, what they find is if you find the ambulance parked up for too long, the batteries run flat because there is a lot of onboard power demand in the ambulance, even when it's switched off. So by having the solar panels, they don't have to hook up to the shoreline to continue to charge the ambulance. Yeah.
That's absolutely wonderful. Well, BIPVCO will be watching and seeing these all over the place, and I can't wait to put it on the top of a little old camper van and go somewhere where nobody can find me ever again. So thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome. You're right.
Okay, so now we're going to move on. So we've looked at the sun, and now we're going to look at another area where we cannot live unless we have it, which is water. Water is so important to us, but with global warming, we're seeing floods and we're seeing intense heat, which are ravaging areas of the world that affect us as well, because we've seen flooding in this country over and over again. And the next speaker is my very good friend. All these people are speaking, they're my friends, indulge me. But Phil Henry is Polypipe. And Polypipe are one of the biggest manufacturers of those big, huge, round things that you have for sewage and water. But he's going to show us some other things he's doing, and I'm very excited about it. So, Phil, over to you.
Right. Hello, Rani. Thank you very much for the introduction. And following on fairly briefly from Daniel and Stephen, roofs will come into this. You'll see the roofs being used for both solar and water storage. But in addition, I would say my background is that I was an apprentice 44 years ago, went into engineering and worked through, and I'm very pleased to say that both of my sons have gone into the built environment engineering via the apprenticeship route as well, and both are successful in that area. So I enhance and support effectively what Stephen was saying earlier. But moving on, in terms of Polypipe civil green urbanisation in cities, blue and green use in terms of SUDS, and SUDS is sustainable urban drainage systems. It's enhancing traditional storage methods with green urbanisation. So nature assisting the engineer, but not hampering the engineer, and trying to offer the engineer some statistics that nature can help in terms of evaporation. So on the left, you will see some hydraulics, and obviously we get involved in calculations for the SUDS in terms of rainfall intensity and climate change and rainfall intensity. And on the right, you will see where we're making room for water, and that can be underneath podium at ground floor level, deep tanks, and also increasingly within cities. The problem with cities is that to put deep tanks in is normally a problem, because you start hitting obviously communications and transport systems as soon as you dig up the ground, and the cost of the real estate is a really important area. So some of the ways that we've tried to innovate this, you'll see as we work through in terms of bringing the built environment into water control on the basis that you cannot have a green infrastructure without having water. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So climate change, circular economy and resource efficiency. So the area we're looking at effectively is how water, generally stormwater and rainwater, currently is collected. Traditionally, it's taken from roof areas, it's put into large storage tanks, and it's pumped. We don't use that water very effectively. We use a lot of carbon to pump that water, and effectively it's going to drain. And that means that resource is a free resource. So certainly for green infrastructure, it's something that's really needed. And then to keep green infrastructure alive, you tend to use a lot of potable water, and potable water, certainly in certain cities, including London, is under stress as well. So you have a perfect threat here of high rainfall and increasing demand for potable water. So how do we work through this? It's a way of looking at, rather than deep tanks, it's a way of bringing nature in so that we can create storage volumes. And one of the ways that we've developed this is a system called Permavoid system, which effectively is a recycled plastic from post-industrial use from the car industry that creates a platform tank system that allows green infrastructure and trees to be built on top of that at roof level and at road level, but also includes something called passive irrigation, which I'll discuss and show later on. Next slide, please. This is a great example. It's actually in Holland, where the product originally originated. That's a station called Orly train station in the center of Amsterdam. And you can see in the background a very tall tower, which is a hotel. And next to that, the low-level buildings are shops. And Orly effectively became a race of survival. People would get off the train, try and run for their lives to the cars and taxis, because this was full of antisocial behavior, mugging, drug abuse, and something had to be done in terms of the area, but also in terms of the impact on the hotel, which was losing revenue, and so were the shops. But also, the Dutch clearly have an issue with most of their land under the water level to deal with climate change and water runoff. So the answer was actually to put Permavoid in, and what we actually ended up with, next slide please, is this. Sorry, could you go back one slide, please? Thank you. So that's the same picture with Permavoid as a platform to store water and to use that water for irrigation, which obviously then controls the runoff, and the sewers are not surcharged. But more importantly, we created wildflower areas for people to come, free spaces for health and well-being, and we really need those then, and we really need them now. And this gives an area for people to come and join. As a consequence, it's being used 7 days a week. The main criticism is there's not enough seating, and the tower at the back has been extended, and all the shops are let, and there's a waiting list. So it has an economic impact as well as an environmental and a social impact. So that just gives you one example how we can address climate change in terms of using sustainable water. Next slide, please. So also important to us is biodiversity net gain. So in looking in terms of developments, how we can assist in creating biodiversity by working with nature, reducing the flood effect, and also using trees and seeing trees as an assistance, but not also as a hindrance. And also the areas of engineering, so looking around the soil effect. So it means different engineers from different areas need to collaborate, not just obviously from manufacturing, but in terms of green roofs, blue roofs, and ergonomous in terms of coming up with solutions. So you need to collaborate, and that's a really important point of this, as well as moving us forward into the digital platform, where I think that we will be looking at the next generation, perhaps of the gamers of the industry, to come into engineering, because there's so many opportunities here. Next slide, please. But also we can apply this to conurbations, so we can effectively look at, you know, the avoid a risk in terms of BNG. We don't want to offset it, we want to include it, and we don't want to buy our way out of it. So effectively, when it comes to BNG, we want to see, and biodiversity net gain, we want to see how we can achieve that with developments to create green areas, more trees, obviously for health and well-being, and also for pollinators to come into areas where we've lost particular species as well. Next slide, please. It also at master planning, again, we're involved with landscape architects and engineering, very early engagement. You have to be engaged very early on with solutions, so we can look at the master plan, where the water's going to land, where the greening's going to be, where the human and animals are going to interact. So in terms of engineering plays a part in terms of water management, but it can't be a silo. It has to work with the other disciplines, and this is where there's lots of opportunities, I think, moving forward for apprenticeships, and in the next few years for perhaps even roles that haven't really been defined yet. Next slide, please. Some other examples where it can be integrated, and it is being integrated into these areas. So in urban roads, it's used for water treatment to take out hydrocarbons. It can be used around existing trees to stop things like tree heave and root heave, which is disturbing pavements, so the tree can actually live. And you can plant trees multiple together, because they need to be planted generally with other trees rather than city areas in silos. We can also create landscape areas. We're looking at smart reuse. Passive irrigation is using the free water, which is great for trees, and it also reduces the threat of surface water overrunning the sewer systems as well. Biodiversity we've mentioned, and in terms of effectively removing what you call a solid subbase, which is normally granular, this gives you a storage area which is extra capacity without actually digging up the sewers and replacing them as well. Next slide, please. So placemaking amenity is always important. It's important for developers, commercial developers, because it adds value to the property, but increasingly with the zero carbon, people would want to have areas of roof areas, perhaps podium areas that they can actually use. The other advantage of this, of course, is it does remove some of the storage tanks inside buildings, and that can offer rather an opportunity, as Daniel said earlier, with battery storage, that those areas can be used for battery storage rather than just storing water, which had no real value in the past. The other area about cities is urban cooling. So certainly we will have summer storms, winter storms, but increasingly with very hot temperatures, working with nature, we actually have cooling, and we can demonstrate that on the last slides as we move through with our research routes. And the cooling is quite substantial in terms of putting green infrastructure through evaporation and transpiration. Next slide, please. So trees, as I said, important. You can see some of the isolated trees that have been installed on their own, but obviously working around the trees in terms of root protection and integrating them allows those trees to offer shading to the building, the biodiversity, places for birds and pollinators to come. It improves street areas as well, so the tree is not seen as a threat. Also, in terms of summer, shading and cooling are offered as well as part of the sponge in terms of both water and carbon, and also trees are very good for us in terms of health and well-being. Next slide, please. So this is a very simple way in terms of the engineering. The raft then is built. On top of that is the soils, and you're working with different specialists in soil areas. This has been put together as part of a larger, wide digital animation and VR. So again, it really lends itself to people and apprentices that probably are gamers coming into the industry, where there's lots of opportunity to be involved with digital twins and actually developing this. And there are quite a few projects I'm involved with in London where we're actually using that. So the left gives you the structure, and on the right, you can see there through the water, irrigation, and subbase, we actually then create a place for nature to be used. So we have all of those advantages effectively that the biodiversity is offering, but also the defined storage for the water control as well. Next slide, please. And also street level. So this is being used actually in a London street where the pavement was dug up, and they put in there some urban farming. They also put in there some raised areas for green infrastructure, but the main requirement was to stop hard paving runoff of surface water over topping the sewer systems, and that's been very successful in terms of slowing that down. But as a retrofit, it's a major job. But once you have that, of course, then you have more people actually using the street, which is, in this particular case, it has happened in terms of people coming out, looking after the areas of flowers that have been put in, which were not there before. Next slide, please. So in terms of research, we have a roof, two roofs. This one is actually in Amsterdam. So that was the roof before, which was asphalted, very traditional, typical roof. We have one in the UK as well. And by actually putting the cells on top of the roof, and we'll probably be taking the area that Daniel was looking for his solar panels as well, we then create a platform for green roofs to be installed with a blue roof, creating a green-blue roof. Next slide, please. Very simple. The waterproofing is put down, and then the cells are laid on top. Next slide, please. And within effectively 18 months to 2 years, we would have green infrastructure. And this roof is heavily connected, but not only just for green infrastructure, it's also connected to weather data. So the weather data is very accurate. It will tell us the precipitation, how much water will fall. The roof then can arrange for that water to be released out into the sewer system. But in the meantime, the water is being evaporated off the roof. And typically it's around about between 2 and 4 litres per square metre that's being evaporated in summer. Also very important, at the height of summer, the solar radiation is being absorbed by the green infrastructure, which is allowing cooling off the roof. But more importantly, the building itself is being cooled, certainly on the top floor. And those figures are quite substantial, 70 degrees to about 40 degrees differential on a very hot day. So there's lots of benefits in terms of research, and these roofs are connected to 17 areas of research, from wind direction through to solar, but also creating great places for people to come and sit and look at nature within a city area that did not have it before. Next slide, please. This is my actually last slide, but one of the important things about putting the system in for storage is that you can see conventional roofs are in the red, storing water. So they do store water, but not to the rate that we need for both flood mitigation and reducing the need for potable water as well. Once that water runs out, we need then to irrigate the roof, and that means using potable. But by increasing permavoid in terms of different depths and substrates, you can see that we effectively go from just over sort of a factor of 3 in terms of storage of the water and reuse of the water, which is really important in giving the water at the root system that water so that they can take up the water and the minerals, and then obviously evaporate and cool and create that platform, rather than actually putting in potable water all the time. And we can measure that obviously through sensors and again linking into the digital analysis. So loads of areas in terms of engineering. So not just from making one element, but collaborating right across the whole area for these types of solutions. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into blue-green roofs and cities. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is absolutely a passion of yours, I know, because you've been doing it and you've been talking to schools and universities. I'm going to offer you a chance in a lifetime, as they say, when we do start going out on and taking advantage of the Turing scheme and putting together groups of university students right down to school children to go out to perhaps the countries in the world that are suffering from the way that we're behaving in the more developed countries. So, Phil, you've got to get your hard hat on, you know, your little bits and pieces, put it around your belt and come out, because Africa, where we have intense problems of huge flooding or droughts, you know, and temperatures ranging in this world from +50 to -50. That's where we need to be. We need to be taking this technology over there. I've got a couple of questions for you, though. And it's always something that's worried me. I think not enough people and young people that are listening to this realize that when they think about climate change, it doesn't affect them. Now, if you look at the table and if you go on to the, I think it's a World Atlas, they do some work on this. Obviously, we look at Maldives, the islands in the Pacific that are drowning, the South Pacific Islands. Maldives is losing enormous amount. Sri Lanka, where Daniel and I come from, that will be underwater soon if we don't do something. 2050 seems to be not that far off. What we don't understand is that when we come to Europe to see the most threatened countries in the, you know, that are going to be flooded, we are only the third. The top, of course, is Holland, because it's built below the sea line. The second is Ireland, and the third is the UK. So we see, I don't know what it must be like to be sitting in a house that's been destroyed by floods over and over again, and some of these people are doing it. Do you think it's got anything to do with the fact that we're now tarmacking all of our driveways to put our cars on? And what could you do to stop that?
A lot of the developments is around hard standing. If you look at the green infrastructure, it will absorb quite a lot of water in terms of runoff, sort of a 70-30 percentage. But as soon as you hard landscape an area, you revert that around. So you get 70% runoff and 30% absorption. So the problem then becomes, what do you do with that water as soon as it comes off and it just goes into the sewer systems? I think there is hope on the horizon. Certainly commercially, people are looking in terms of ESG and their zero climate commitments. So they want to employ these types of systems to help them mitigate that runoff. They don't also want to mitigate resilience in their buildings so they don't become flooded, because obviously if they're not flooded, they can operate and they can have a business. But with existing housing stock, it's much more difficult. I guess our our solutions play a part because they're upstream in terms of reducing the runoff to come in. But in the past, there's been issues, Rani, in terms of adoption of these systems when they're actually installed. So who would adopt them, with the local authority or the water authority? So that's one of the questions that needs to be overcome rapidly in terms of housing, because there is general consent in terms of the work that I'm doing at Thamesmead, which is an existing area of high, development post 1960s concrete, is that people do want, very hot days, very warm there. They do want green infrastructure, and it allows us to collaborate. But at the same time, there's huge amounts of costs in terms of insurance companies now. With this, flooding is becoming, and escape of water are becoming real issues for them commercially, in terms of obviously just replacing buildings. And if you look on the east coast of the country, up by Norfolk, of course, you have areas falling into the sea, and Haysborough as well, for erosion. So there are significant problems. So it is around the whole design area in terms of creating the SUDS design and then getting over the adoption element of them, because they're quite well tested now in terms of systems and longevity.
So with everything that you've shown us today, my major problem is with this huge drive of having to build 1 million houses, 300,000 a year. Where is there any sort of legislation that this should be part of the infrastructure package? When you're putting foundations down, you've got to start thinking about how we're going to manage water. It might save our lives, but it could destroy our lives. So is there anything like that?
Well, in terms of, I guess mainly London is probably more developed because of the London plan in terms of, an overall plan for development, and water and sustainability fall into that in terms of rainfall intensity. So other projects that we're working on outside of that, we're doing a research group in Manchester at the moment. We're using the London plan requirement, which has rainfall intensity and climate change built into that to future-proof it. And then in addition, where we would work in the area that Audley will speak on later in terms of modular, is creating areas where we put this down as a raft and a sub-base before the modular houses arrive. So you already have that included and pre-built. So I think the issue around the whole area is looking at the housing sector between developers that build effectively housing and then leave, and then long-term developers who have an interest in remaining perhaps and creating an asset for people, the PRS, private rented sector. There seems to be a much more of an openness to say they have a long responsibility for the property of creating resilience, and community areas as well. So community gardens, urban farming, all of this plays a part in terms of reducing the water runoff use, but creating smart ways of using water.
Well, that leads us nicely into tomorrow's program, because it's all about finance and it's all about ESG, environment, social governance. A buzzword, but it is such an important word. This is trying to, I call it, I don't know if I invented it or whether I've seen it somewhere and I've made it my own, but it's about monetizing philanthropy. If you've got huge amounts of money or a little pot of money and you don't want to lose it and you want to get some benefit out of it, why not put it to good use? So put it into green projects, back all these sort of ideas of climate change. We have got to get away from fossil fuels. Obviously, everybody knows that, but where they don't look at is areas that you do. So thank you, Phil. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for your time as always. And online, of course, you do online training. You're going to help me get my training programs into young offenders units, into the military, people that are leaving the forces, coming back here. Unfortunately, to my cost, because I worked in homelessness units, a lot of our forces end up on the streets. We can't have that. We must make sure that our workforce is ready to go. So engineering, water sustainability, all those sort of things, that's the way forward.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
No, pleasure. Thank you for the invite. Thank you.
Not at all. Right. So now our speaker comes from the area of education. I and Yetunde are here in South Essex, in Basildon, and South Essex College is on our doorstep. Stephen knows it very well because it's his patch, and South Essex College has places in Southend and Thurrock and Basildon. Last year, for Black History Month, we put on something called the Flotilla. I was so upset that we couldn't do anything for Windrush Day on the 22nd of June, and we saw that things were being frozen. We couldn't do anything. Everything was online, and I'm not a person to say no to. So we put on something. If you want to read on Voice, you will see the Flotilla, the newspaper Voice online, and you'll see Stephen Metcalf there, and you'll see our next speaker as well. So a big welcome to Simon Lofting, who leads in South Essex College on marine engineering, a hugely, hugely important trade for a country that's an island, and with the Thames being the lifeblood and having so much development around there. Simon, will you tell us what you're all up to?
Thanks, Rani, and thanks for offering us to come and see you today. And thanks, nice to meet everybody here today. Yeah, my name's Simon Lofting. I run the marine engineering apprenticeship from the South Essex College. My background was a marine engineering apprentice back in the 80s. I used to work for a company called Paxman's, and we used to do all the warship, frigates, mine hunters, engines and systems. And Paxman's back then used to be a huge employer, in fact, probably one of the biggest employers in Colchester, and had a lot of apprentices there as well. Then my career went from there into the police. I spent 20 years afloat, patrolling and investigating sort of maritime issues around the Essex coastline, the Kent coastline. So we had a responsibility of looking after 360 miles of coastline. So, and when you're doing that on a day-to-day basis, obviously it comes home to you what you've really got on your doorstep. And yes, yeah, we're a floating island, but just our little area, if we looked at Essex, Kent, London, or those areas, I mean, Essex and Kent, we had 360 miles of coastline. If we're looking up the River Thames, we've got probably about 22,000 shipping movements, commercial shipping movements a year. Everything that we eat, or 95% of what we eat, wear, use, comes in by boat at some point during its lifetime, and much of that, sort of the entire journey, comes in. So it's a huge area where we need marine engineers. The Thames Skills Academy approached us at the college and said, look, we've got maybe 150 employers on the Thames that dabble in maritime engineering of some degree. They need marine engineers on site to keep the infrastructure around London going and around Kent. Can we do anything? And why haven't we got anything? And even when I cast my mind back to the late 80s, there was nothing at all. There was a car mechanics course at the local Colchester Institute, and if you was a marine engineer, you'd pretty much go there for this end of the country. Southampton had no problems at all, at the Isle of Wight and Hull, and up until this day, that's always been exactly the same, believe it or not. So there never has been a maritime engineering course of this type within the southeast of England. So I produced a course for the college. It was based really on old style apprenticeships. So when you come in one door, and after 4 years, you go out the other door with lots of lovely skills. And in particular to this course, you do good 3 years in welding, you've got mechanical, you've got diagnostics, you've got electrical, hydraulic, the whole lot, hand tools, everything. And as well as the academic side, so the mathematics, the engineering science, mechanical principles, electrical principles, again, all part of that course. So we've been running now. I'm just about to take in my third intake, literally any day now, hopefully. Sadly, it was put back a little bit because of COVID, but we're nearly there. It has knocked employers, which has caused me a huge problem. I spoke with sort of Stephen earlier in the year when we did the Windrush event, and it's something that we really need to hammer home to employers and give them the confidence to take on apprentices now, because they are our future. All of the employers that I have an aging workforce that are fairly due to retirement within literally the next couple of years or few years, and literally nobody take over from them. And as Rani said at the very start, it's a great opportunity now to be an apprentice, because as long as you finish that apprenticeship, actually prior to retirement age, you can still be an apprentice. So it's nice to see a variation of ages. It's no longer just the youngsters that have come from school for an apprenticeship. So to give you a bit of idea, our background itself actually teaches a course called the Maritime Defence course. It's a course that was or is taught by the Navy for Navy students. So it is a bit of an infill there if people did want to move on. But essentially it gives me 4 years on a day release program to teach apprentices everything from, so the smallest of pleasure vessels up to large commercial. And if we needed to, sort of frigate warship size. Now, the cohort at the moment, we don't have sort of military cohort. So the majority of them are either from the pleasure industry, such as marinas. And we've got 95 marinas in Essex alone. And the rest of them are from commercial. So, for example, I have the Port of London Authority's apprentices. I have the Metropolitan Police apprentices, the party boats, which is Livet's TLC and Bennett's barges. So all of these vessels that are on the Thames and do day-to-day business, including Thames Clippers, have marine engineers. So they're doing all really well in the course. I've got two separate years going on at the moment, which is a year 2 level 2 course and a year 3 level 3 course. They spend 2 years at level 2, which is a competence and a knowledge year. and then 2 years at competence and knowledge extended for level 3. So the qualifications at the end of it is really nice for them. They walk out with a good level of qualifications.
Hello?
Yeah, I think we're having technical issues.
Hi. Can you see me, Tunde?
I can see you, you're live. I think we're having technical issues.
What's happening?
We're having technical issues.
Right.
So can you take over? Because yeah, you're on screen, you're on Zoom now.
Okay.
So say something, because Simon, I think we've lost Simon.
Right. Okay. Well, that was a shame, because he was going to show us some videos of actually inside it. And also, what is absolutely wonderful was that he was going to show us some of the women, because there's a whole cohort of young ladies who are coming out of there in marine engineers. I want to just talk then about what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And tomorrow, as I said, just talking to Daniel, I think it was about ESG, environment, social, governance. This, of course, is how we think we want to go. This is the path that we have to follow as a world. We all came together and we beat COVID. We are beating it around the world. We know that there are challenges on the horizon, but if we all gather together and use our resources, the ones that have for the ones that have not, then we will make things better, and we'll make things better for the next generation following us. Audley, I don't know if you're there. Can you hear me, Audley?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Now I want you to fill in with that. Oh, those palm trees swaying in the background. I went on a Zoom using this one with the trees behind, and somebody said, where are you from? Are you sitting in some sort of park there with the sun shining? I said I was in sunny Basildon. However, Audley, Phil mentioned in his talk as well about sustainability and about developments. And we've worked very closely with the things together. And Phil's got something called Plug and Play. So just tell me a little bit about how your products can be built, what it's all about, and just a little bit about how we train our next people that are sitting here, whatever age they are, into doing something in building a better world. So over to you.
Well, I'll go back on a couple of things that Phil said about permeable paving and getting the water to run through than having it just run across the surface and into the drainage, and the adoption for the local authorities to adopt schemes that's got permeable pavings on, because it's more expensive to have permeable pavings. That's the first things. It's usually 120% more, but obviously it does a lot better for the environment, just like green roofs, you know. for their biodiversity is much more sustainable than just having just a conventional pitch roof or flat roof on. So just like anything else in manufacturing, once you get up in scale, the cost of these will obviously come down. If you just look at the original mobile phone, the brick that we used to carry around, which cost £3,500, and just through now mass production, you know, you can get a basic phone. The SIM card is more expensive than the actual phone itself then. So I think just as we go forward with sustainability, once we start using these products more in abundance, then the price will come down. Now, going on to what your question is about, plug and play, for me, and using modern methods of construction, I think that for apprenticeship schemes now, what we will be looking at is using the plumbing system or the electrical system, which is much more easier to install, because at the moment plumbing is used by copper and there's other plastic pipes, and the fittings last a lot longer. And the same with the electrics. You get the looms that will be designed in a factory, already tested, and it will come to site. And then you use semi-skilled labor to run these within the modules. And at the end, then this is tested by the electrician to sign it off. So I think that apprenticeships now, from my side, coming from MMC, will be multi-skilled, so that they can do a lot more other tasks, and in turn that will drive down the cost.
So are you saying then, Audley, sorry, I should have introduced you. This is Audley English of Build Eco, who's been doing it for the last 20 years, Windrush Child, UK's first West Indian architect, and has built many iconic, or designed many iconic buildings. MMC, what does it mean?
MMC, basically modern methods of constructions, because the construction industry up until now, the standard of finishes is really appalling. If you look at a car, for instance, you would not buy a car to the standard that you buy a house today. So the components now that are built into the factory, which are at a much higher standard, and there's different forms of MMC, whether it's volumetric, that means the box that is built in the factory, then that's transported to site and craned in to place, and they call it zipped when you put two boxes or two volumetric components together. Then you zip it together so that the joint you don't see. But our approach is panelized, so which has many advantages. It means that the components can be delivered to site in smaller vehicles and assembled a lot quicker, but also using modern methods of construction, the way that it's applied, but the quality is far superior than using traditional trades, so to speak.
Okay, so Audley, I think one of the things that always surprises me, that after World War II, it was build, build, build. You know, we had the same sort of problem, and actually what's created the Windrush problem, you know, being people from Caribbean mostly told to come here and build the country and then finding themselves not welcome. But the other thing was that we had to build 300,000 or 500,000 houses, and we went from modular flat packs, which is presumably, when you talk about panelized system, that's similar. It's sort of like a wall that's built in a factory and then put together. But I've seen your houses, and I've seen the way that they're almost put together with a key. You know, I think I've seen a video somewhere. I don't know if you can share it, but the way it went, and with the plug and play system where everything is there ready to be switched on, you know, plugged in literally. How long did it take to put a house up that people can live in?
Well, the components are basically what we're looking at is that at the end of life, the buildings can then be deconstructed, and those components then can be reconfigured and to build other types of building. A lot of buildings that go up at the moment, when they come to their end of life, they're very difficult to deconstruct, and generally you cannot reuse the components. So it's just a different mindset of the way that we're looking to put buildings together.
Well, that's incredible. There's a lot to be said about the things that we're going to be seeing and doing. I think, Yetunde, we've got something to fill in. What a shame Simon had to leave us from South Essex College. However,
I think Simon's back.
You can run the YouTube of Angela O'Donoghue, who's the South Essex principal, because she was actually talking against the Wat Tyler Park here and in the marina, correct?
Okay, can I just ask, Audley, can you just go on mute for me, please? Rani, can you show your face, please? Thank you.
Yep.
I will try to share. I will now try to share. I will now try to share the video of Angela from the Windrush earlier on. Well, last year now. Wow. Okay.
Time flies. Thanks, Audrey. Sorry about that. BT rather kindly texted me and said, we're just about to knock your internet off, which was wonderful, really, at this time.
Oh, well, we're going to show the video, hopefully, that we did on the 23rd of October. Here's Angela talking about...
And I'm principal of South Essex College, and it's a great privilege to be here at Bosun Arena in Wat Tyler Park today. I've got to be honest, I didn't even know it was here until I've arrived today. But it is a fantastic facility. You may already know that South Essex College runs right across along the Thames. We have a campus at Southend, we have campuses in Basildon, and we have a campus in Thurrock in Grays town centre. And we run a programme which is an apprenticeship which is in marine engineering, which is quite unusual because a lot of colleges don't do those sorts of high-end technical qualifications. We do, and so we work. Simon, who runs our course, works closely here with the marina and with other marinas along the Thames estuary. We really believe that it's important that we keep the heritage skills and the skills of the river going in this part of the country, and so that's why we try and run courses and programs that meet that need, because there are a lot of people in that industry who are ageing and therefore will be leaving their careers, and they need young people to come and replace those skills, and that's what we're here for, to train people in the skills that are required.
Thank you so much. Now, I've just sent a message for everybody that I think, oh, we're going to see the flotilla, are we? Oh, now we're back to Simon. Were we going to see the flotilla, or are we going to speak to Simon? I think we'll go back. Simon, are you there? He's got issues with the...
Yes, I'm here. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Right, well, that's a bit of a pity because we wanted to see the flotilla going. But if you tell us, because we are right at the point
Have
now
you got me?
planning the next Windrush event. Are you breathing, Simon? You seem to have frozen. You okay?
No, I am. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Right, I can.
Yes.
So tell us just very briefly how you managed to get an Uber Clipper boat with 200 seats in it. You got police launches, you got private individuals, you got the Port of London Authority, you got Thurrock's local authority to welcome us. And we're going to have a bigger and better one as soon as this COVID takes its stranglehold off us. So bringing all those people together, why is it so important that for the Thames and for the country that you do what you're doing? And you've got only about another 4 minutes.
No, that's fine. No problem at all. Yeah, as we said before, it's really important to keep this going. We are struggling at the moment, to be honest with you, because employers are worried about the COVID, so worried about taking on apprentices, obviously. But we need those apprentices through the doors, and I need, 10 sort of bottoms on seats, if you like, to be able to financially run the course. And we need to give that confidence to the employers. Now, without this, obviously, we are losing this skill set, which goes back, generations and generations, especially on the Thames when we look at watermen and lightermen. I said earlier, hopefully you may have heard that many of the people that my apprentices work with are due to retire soon. So there's not many people left within industry. And yes, we're the only place in the southeast of England that runs this type of course. So really important for us. So
what could we do as a community to support you and to encourage more young people?
Is there anything else you'd like from me? I know mine's around Stephen. Yeah, so for us, really, we're doing a lot we can with media campaigns, with people themselves, to try and get more people through the doors. Yes, we've got a shortage of female in the industry, so we are sort of specifically targeting female. We have a young female from the Port of London Authority who's in her third year at the moment, and my new cohort that's due to start in the next couple of weeks. I do have a young lady, a very young lady from the BAME community as well. So that's fantastic for us as well, and for her, and actually her family, who's sort of a generations of engineering. So for her to come into our industry is brilliant. And I've just managed to get her employed with Thames Clippers. So she's now with Uber Clippers doing a wonderful job, and she's living in Basildon. But yeah, so it'd be wonderful. So it's nice to have, get more women through the door, girls through the door, I should say, for this industry. It is tight, occasionally we'll get one or two, but the more we can get, the better, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Simon. You're a great advocate for your industry, and you have a passion for the sea, obviously. As I said before, when we're starting up and running with our touring project, it'll be Z Generation is going to do all it can to ensure that our students get the very best experiences abroad. And I think you put your name down, have you, for Barbados? Marine engineering. It's about like you told me, if they're trained, they don't have to stay on the Thames, although we need them. It's moving over.
Wonderful.
It's moving over to living on a yacht, going around the world, and somebody extremely, extremely rich. So great way for trade. Thank you so much for everybody for listening and coming in. Don't forget, tomorrow we've got 10 till 11:30. We'll be beaming from Kenya, the mangrove groves over there. We hope to have somebody from Sri Lanka, but this is all about financing, ESG, as you've heard about today. It's about getting as many people to invest in the future of our children. So engineering, we say goodbye to you. We ask you to look at Z Generation YouTube for the previous sessions. And Yetunde, I can't say thank you enough. The next chosen generation has been in Basildon for some time, changing lives of young BAME children, young BAME adults. Would you like to just say a few words to say goodbye? Because you're always behind that screen doing all the work where I just swan around. So if you'd like to say the last words.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting week, as so to speak. Monday was quite educational. Tuesday was the same, and of course we're back here now. It's Thursday, and yes, it's an honor to be here working with Rani to deliver this amazing apprenticeship week. It's virtual this year, and we were a bit nervous about doing it, but it's always better to do something than nothing at all. So it's really an honor to be here. And I know that there's so much here, content that has been delivered so far this week, that the young people, by the time they start viewing it one by one, will be educated and will know that they do have alternative solutions to still continuing education, but informally. And it might actually be a better option for them. And I think, like I shared earlier on in the week, I wish I knew about apprenticeships when I was growing up, because I'm more of a practical person than an academic. So I ended up in the academic world as opposed to an apprenticeship. And I think even after graduation, I wanted to do an apprenticeship just to be part of that hands-on training, which but sometimes by the time you graduate you haven't got work experience, so it becomes a bit of a challenge, but that's a story for another day. So it's absolutely be educational to be here. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to Rani for inviting us all here and coordinating us all to be part of this. Do please, wherever you're watching from, wherever you're connected to, please do go back to the Z Generation YouTube page to revisit all the sessions from Monday, Tuesday, today. And of course, we are definitely looking forward to the last session tomorrow. I've told Rani my phone will be switched off on Saturday and Sunday. She's not allowed to call me. I've done my bit now. So yeah, but it's been very educational, very pleasant to have all the speakers that we've had this week. And I do hope that everybody has found it as beneficial as I have. So once again, we say thank you to Rani. We say thank you to all the speakers that we've had today. Thank you all for joining us and making time out this afternoon. We will be back tomorrow morning, actually, the one morning session that we do have tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So please join us live on YouTube. If you can't join us live at 10 o'clock in the morning, then please go back and visit the session for tomorrow. But that's it from me. Rani, do you want to say the last few words for today?
Yes, please. I always like to have the last word. What I wanted to do is to tell everybody, when you go on to Z Generation UK YouTube, please scroll right the way through, because our flotilla event, which was probably the only live one on during Black History Month to celebrate Windrush, you go up to the videos at the top as well. You'll hear 104-year-old Nellie Brown talking about her experiences, right down through medics, through engineers, women engineers, through all the families talking about their experiences. So thank you to Stephen for highlighting that, yes, we are a BAME group in Busden. However, it's about welcoming everybody, because we march side by side with the community. So thank you again, and we will speak to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.